Hello HTML Cadet. To understand how to edit this page, we need to understand HTML. Now, don't worry, it's not going to be super difficult. Just as with any other language, we just need to get some practice in understanding how all of this works and comes together. HTML is a language used by our browsers to translate code into complex and stylized web pages. So, let's begin learning HTML. What is an HTML element? An HTML element is defined by a start tag, some kind of content inside, and an end tag. You can tell that something is an end tag because it has the slash. So this whole thing is referred to as an HTML element. These tags tell your browser what you want to happen to this information. So if you want to wrap an H1 tag around some words, it will become a heading. And you can try this yourself. You can open up a notepad file and save it as a .html. And then the next time that you open it, it will open in your browser and it will show you something that looks like this. These tags are interesting because generally they don't care where they're located. As long as there's a start and an end, they're fine. Sometimes we separate these tags out on each line so that it improves legibility. This was the heading tag. Now let's look at a different example, a paragraph tag. Here we have a paragraph, and inside of it we've bolded a piece of text. Let's look at the HTML code to see how we achieved this. Here you can see that we've actually placed a bold tag inside of the paragraph tag. Putting tags inside of other tags is actually really common. There's one more concept that you need to understand before we start tackling the website, and that's something that's called an attribute. The easiest way for you to understand this is probably with a link tag. To create a link, you need specific link tags as per usual in HTML. However, just placing an A will not work. We need to add something called an attribute, which will link to whatever page we would like. In this case, we're adding an href attribute that includes the link that we want. Now our link will work. We can also add other attributes, and there are many. One that we could add is style. Here inside these quotations, we can add a lot of different modifications to how our link will be presented. Maybe we want this link to show up as a red color instead of black, or we want to increase the font size, or add a border around this link, or even to change the text size, depending on if you're looking at this page on a cell phone or on a computer. These are all possible with this style attribute. The only thing that we really need to remember is a couple of rules. Attributes are always defined inside the start bracket, and whatever value we give the attribute, it needs to be in quotations. So if you want a link with a black background and a white text color, we could write a style and then open brackets color colon and then the color that you would want. And then a semicolon. Then you can add background color colon the color that you would want there. Notice that when specifying a color, you have a choice. You can either write what's known as hexadecimal notation, or you can just write the word white or black or red, and the browser should know what you mean. And there you have it. Now recall what we talked about, where it doesn't matter where you place the tags, as long as there's an opened and a closed one. So if we wanted to bold the word Google here, we could put the bold bracket around that word specifically inside of the link tag. Now you should have enough knowledge about HTML to dive into the code on the HMB 300 page. The first thing to notice is that they're using an HTML tag that we haven't seen before, a div tag. Now this is nothing to worry about. It gives structure to the web page by breaking it up into as many sections as we'd like. You can already see what we've talked about here though, tags within tags. There's a lot of these div classes within one another. It's almost like a matryoshka doll, a doll within a doll. To not get lost, what I like to do is find where the beginning and the end brackets are. It's pretty simple to do. Usually the start and the end tags are on the same indent in a document. So start at the beginning bracket of the div that you're interested in. Now imagine a line going all the way down the page until you find where the closing bracket is. It can sometimes be difficult to see, so you can even grab a ruler to do this if you would like. Aha, here is our end tag. So this whole section of code has been given this content box attribute. We can see that once this one is done, the next div also has this content box attribute. So this whole page is being built on these content boxes. Box 1 here is the header, and box 2 is the rest of the content. We can see that the text corresponds to this. If we study these lines of code, we can begin to see the code that I taught you earlier. You can see the h1 tag, which is used for the welcome to. Here is an href tag used to link your email. Instead of a B for bold, the HTML page is using a strong tag, but this doesn't matter, they are interchangeable. You'll also notice that there's an img tag at the top of this page. That's an image tag with an attribute that's called source. This is similar to the link tag, the href that we talked about earlier, where the href points to another web page. This points to the source of where the image came from. Another thing I wanted to mention that you'll see throughout this page is data API endpoint and data API return type set as an attribute. This is confusing, and it might make this code appear scarier than it actually really is. I just wanted to say that this doesn't matter. Don't pay attention to it, never worry about it. This is just something that Quarkus adds to the web page, which whenever you click save, it will add. You can delete it, you can change it to whatever you like, but once you hit save, Quarkus will change it back based on what you entered as the source tag. So don't worry about it too much. Now down here in the content box, we can see a paragraph tag. And so changing any of this text will change the website. I think that kind of makes sense. So here we have something called a span tag, for instance. This just lets you adjust the color of the text that's inside. The span tag has a style attribute, and we see the font size here and the color being changed. Inside the tags is our greeting, welcome to. We can change this in the HTML to say welcome students instead. Let's do that. Now let's change the color from this hexadecimal value of white to just red. Click save, and now we can see that it's turned into a red color. Now let's say that we wanted to increase the size of the text that was underneath the HMB 300 logo. Let's get back into the editor. We can find the span tag that corresponds to Professor Bilju, and once again it has a font size of 14 and a white hexadecimal color. Keep in mind that if the span tag doesn't have these attributes, you can add them yourself. There are actually numerous resources online that give you a list of possible attributes that your span tag can have. For now, we're just going to change the font size from 14 to 20. And save it, and if you look at the page, now it looks bigger. Now let's take a look at deleting and adding buttons. The first step to trying this is to remember the text that we would like to edit. So for instance, maybe we want to change the text from office hours to something else. Let's edit the page, change to HTML mode, and drag down the text box to make it larger. Now, if we scroll down to the next context box, you can see that the buttons match the website. There's an announcements, a modules, and a syllabus button. If we keep scrolling, we find a div class that corresponds to the important links. That's where we know our button resides. And here we can clearly see this nested hierarchy of indentations, an almost Matryoshka doll-like structure to the code. It's where we have these div classes inside of div classes. And we can see here that this one, labeled office hours, can be changed. The text changed to out of office, for example. We can also see that this text is enveloped in a tag that we recognize actually. It's an A tag, the one responsible for making links, if you remember. So here, just like with any other A tag, there is an href attribute. And we can see that it takes us to the office hours webpage. So if we wanted to change this, we just need to paste in a different URL. But remember that that link needs to be inside of quotes. Now, let's say that we just want to get rid of this button. If we just deleted the link tag and left everything else intact, we can see that the button still remains and we only removed the link. We deleted the text, and clicking the button won't take you anywhere. But the button is not gone. Let's go back into the HTML document and delete the button for good. We need to see where the code for the button starts and ends, like we did before. Even though we deleted the URL, the div class that's responsible for creating the button on our HTML page still actually exists. We can find our button that we edited earlier, and it doesn't have the link tag anymore, but we didn't delete the span tag that when we were last here, so that has remained. To delete this button, we need to see which div this button belongs to in the hierarchy. So let's trace it back, starting with this span tag. Above that, we have a div that's a button class. Okay, great. Let's go on to the line above that. There's another div class. Okay, great. Let's go on to the line above that. Oh, this one is a closing tag. These closing tags aren't for the button that we're looking for, but for the button above that one. So that means that this is the first button tag that we have to select. We select from there all the way down to the last corresponding button tag that closes this tag, and we delete it. And we're done. In order to add a button, it's as simple as copying an existing button and pasting it after the closing div tag so that you don't disrupt any of the divs. There's always a lot more to learn, but I hope that this is enough to get you started on the basics of this web page. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to help, so shoot me a message.